Welcome to Rich Planet TV, November 2013 broadcast. I'm Richard D. Hall. Why not visit the Rich Planet shop? We've got lots of Christmas gift ideas, including calendars, t-shirts, DVDs and mugs. All helps to fund the ongoing research. If you watched last month's show, you will know I am currently involved in a project trying to seek out locations where silent black triangular aerial vehicles may be being hidden. These vehicles have been reliably spotted by multiple witnesses at various locations in the UK. After the show was broadcast, I received a very interesting report from a viewer. He pointed out that within Google Earth is a facility known as the visibility cloak, which allows you to select a point on the Earth or even at a particular altitude above the Earth and ask Google Earth to shade in the area on the ground which is visible from the selected point. An imaginary cloak is then automatically drawn on the Earth's surface, showing everywhere that can be seen from that point. If one chooses several points throughout a particular area, it is possible to find out which areas fall outside of the visibility cloaks, and thus are obscured from public view. Obviously, a secret base or portal is likely to be out of view, so this could be a useful tool in identifying possible base locations. The viewer performed comprehensive visibility cloak analysis on areas around Yorkshire. Having done this, they concluded that one particular place stood out as being far more likely than any other as a hiding place for stealth vehicles. I'm not going to reveal the location just yet, but I can tell you that I currently have surveillance cameras in position over this area, and I've actually had one stolen from this area. Right, I've camouflaged this one pretty good, so if this one gets nicked, I'm going to be pretty upset. Okay, mission accomplished, camera in position. The viewer also made a very good point about whether or not a physical secret base is likely to be under the ground in these regions. In their opinion, it would be unlikely in a country which is as densely populated as the UK. They thought that at some point in time, someone is bound to stumble across it. Therefore, in their opinion, it's unlikely. They went on to make a very interesting suggestion, however, that some of the larger, deeper, most secluded reservoirs might be being used as park and hide facilities. They thought that it's far more likely that reservoirs could be being used as temporary hiding places during the hours of daylight, rather than in artificially constructed bases. In other words, they are using reservoirs as natural bases without the need to actually construct one. The cold environment and the water within the reservoir might even provide some function for the craft's propulsion system. I will of course report on my findings in future shows. It's encouraging also that a number of viewers have bought stealth cameras and are carrying out their own surveillance. Now, a few months ago I mentioned a builder who discovered an ancient underground structure in Wales the shape of a pyramid. At this point in time, I am not at liberty to give any further information about the incident, just that further inquiries are ongoing. It promises to be a very interesting show when I eventually get permission to broadcast it. Now, the Rich Planet's 2013 speaking tour has been rescheduled to February 2014. Venue and ticket details are now available at richplanet.net, and so far I've got 7 venues booked, starting at Great Yarmouth, then Doncaster, Manchester, Birmingham, Newcastle, Hastings and Cardiff. I will be launching a new Rich Planet film to accompany this tour, and stay tuned for that because it will hopefully leave you with your jaw on the floor. I recently arranged another interview with researcher Lloyd Pye, and will be meeting him soon to cover his incredible work on human origins, Bigfoot evidence and the Star Child skull. Again, this is not to be missed, and hopefully some of it will be screened next month. Now, at this point in time, I've got 4 or 5 investigations ongoing, and frustratingly none of these are at a stage where I can put out information yet. Hence this month I'm a little dry on material.
For this reason, I thought it would be a good time to rebroadcast the 2011 film, The Berwyn UFO Cover Up, Exposed. The film has never been shown online and has only been screened once or twice on television. It provides compelling evidence that authorities go to great lengths to cover up certain UFO cases, and it also shows beyond reasonable doubt that military forces operating in the UK can and do get employed to deal with UFO incidents. The film demonstrates that you are wasting your time watching mainstream UFO documentaries because their program makers are prevented by the powers that be from reporting facts, especially when the military have been used to cover up these facts. Strap in tight for the Berwyn UFO Cover Up, Exposed.
In August 2009, the famous ufologist Timothy Good put me in touch with researcher Margaret Fry.
That they, about this Berwyn incident, because
Margaret lives in North Wales, which has been a hotspot for UFO reports over decades. Margaret has investigated many of them, and in particular, the Berwyn Mountain case from 1974. I contacted Margaret, not realizing this introduction would mark the beginning of an incredible journey of discovery. The Berwyn UFO Cover Up. How can things which happen randomly in remote parts of Wales possibly be covered up by the authorities in London, you might ask? Well, the cover-up of certain information is only part of what the authorities have done. The main part, which is a term coined by researcher Andrew Johnson, is known as the muddle-up. Information which they cannot hide is simply muddled up rather than covered up. This is done with the help of shills who operate in our mainstream media and are particularly prominent when it comes to some UFO cases. This will become clear later in the film. Before I describe what took place in 1974, it's important to understand the geography of this dramatic location. The events centre around a small village called Llandrillo. The village is located at the foot of the Berwyn mountain range. The mountain peak overshadowing Llandrillo is called Bronwen. Let's just take a fly around Bronwen to get a feel for the incredible landscape surrounding this little village. Llandrillo sits at the end of a corridor of steep hills stretching southward. If we travel along this corridor, following the path of a tributary of the River Dee, 3 miles in a southerly direction, we approach the foot of another mountain peak, known as Berwyn, on the left. In this investigation, trying to uncover who saw what and when has been easily confused by the fact that many locations have poor visibility due to the terrain. In particular, Llandrillo itself has no visibility of where the events took place on the Berwyn mountain some 3 miles away. A group of 3 witnesses, Pat Evans and her 2 teenage daughters, provided compelling testimony describing a highly unusual object they witnessed when they pulled over on this road, the B4391. They viewed a glowing object for 10 minutes on the other side of the valley, seemingly resting on the side of the Berwyn mountain. The Evans family testimony was detailed and is considered to be very reliable. What is immediately clear from these 3D visuals is that people in Llandrillo and in the small holdings along the foot of the valley would have had no view of this object. Now that we have a feel for the landscape, let's move on to the events of 1974. 23rd of January 1974, Wednesday evening, 8:38 p.m. A large explosion was heard by local people, followed by an earth tremor. The earth tremor was so powerful that glasses fell from shelves in pubs in Bala. Bala is a small town 7 miles west of Llandrillo. The people of Llandrillo village came out into the streets to try and determine what had caused the explosion and subsequent earth tremor. Many of them used the local telephone box to report the incident to the police. A major incident was logged by the police, which describes the nature of the incident as an explosion. The log also shows that the police contacted air traffic controllers to determine whether military or civilian aircraft had been in the area. This indicates the police believed something may have crashed. People reported bright lights in the sky of various colours, one stating the lights were not like a meteorite.
A remote area of North Wales was shaken by a mysterious explosion during the night, and no one yet knows why.
One witness stated, "The loud bang I thought was a lorry coming off the A5 and hitting a house." Witnesses described a large glowing ball of light travelling overhead towards the Berwyn Mountains. These sightings were in the main shortly after the explosion and earth tremor had occurred.
It's a greenish blue colour. I was standing just by the police station there when you went just over there.
What was it? Was it a streak or a flash?
Yeah,
or
it was a streak, it was just coming down.
Another significant point is that at this point in time, nobody thought the event was an earthquake. Neither the police nor the public thought an earthquake was the cause of this tremor.
The whole house was shaking, you know, trembling underneath somewhere.
What did you think was happening?
No idea what was happening. We were all stunned for a few seconds.
Claims of an earthquake were to come much later, which we will examine. After the explosion and tremor, some of the locals in Llandrillo reported to the police flashing lights on the side of the Berwyn mountain.
The reason this village differs to all the others is because when people came out their houses here, wondering what was going on, some of them in this village saw lights above that ridge behind us.
In response to this, 4 police officers were dispatched up the mountain and conducted a foot search, suspecting a crashed aircraft. Witness Hugh Lloyd was 14 at the time and lived near the bottom of the Berwyn mountain. On their way up the mountain, the police called at the Lloyd's farm and commandeered their 4-wheel drive Land Rover to help them in their search up Berwyn. We retraced the police's tracks with researcher Scott Felden. We're 2/3 of the way up and Scott's going to tell us what happened with the police when they got here.
Yeah. On the night of the 23rd of January, when the air tremor took place, local police and police from further afield came up this track with Hugh Lloyd in a commandeered Land Rover, which they got from his farm. And so, interestingly, these police in a small, tight-knit community like this didn't know where to go. They didn't have a clue. And that in itself suggested the police weren't local. This particular area here, there was a few cars parked here at the time. And this house here, Blaena Dreilcha, there was a woman who's no longer with us anymore, Mrs. Williams. She actually received a letter, apparently from the Chief Constable, who would have been Gwynedd Constabulary at the time, thanking her for her hospitality, because with the police coming and going up here, she sort of fed and watered them tea and biscuits, that sort of stuff, and the police were very thankful about that. Just came up in the commandeered Land Rover. They came up here. Hugh Lloyd was driving it from the farm gate entrance up there onto the open fields. His neighbour, who was babysitting him that night, a guy who's dead now called Enoch Davis, he drove it on the public section of the road and up here with all the police in the back. When they got on this stretch here, they found their way partially blocked by a vehicle. Obviously, looking at the state of the road, nothing's changed. The people who drove that vehicle never expected anything to happen, any other vehicles to come up, so they just left it willy-nilly. The vehicle, fortunately for the police, was unlocked, and they were able to move it out the way, but they lost about 10 minutes coming up this way. They didn't know who the van belonged to at the time, but they took the tax disc, an old trick apparently, for trying to get the owners to come forward. And obviously they would have questioned the owners to why they were up here in the first place. But that vehicle belonged to 4 lads, who all locals in the village, all brothers, who were out on the fields above us with a homemade lamp, hunting rabbits and hares. They were using a homemade device, a car battery, car headlamp, simple switch on and off, and you could get about an hour's burn time on that before the battery's dead and totally useless, and that's what they were using. They've been described as poachers in the past, but in fact they were actually operating up there with legitimate permission. I understand from what I've been told that they came down, they'd finished lamping, which does away with any idea that Pat Evans, 5 miles away, saw a poacher's lamp. The homemade device had long since died by 9 o'clock. She didn't even arrive till 10. But those lads, because the lamp had packed in, they come down through the trees, and surprise to them, they saw all these police hanging around their vehicle. And what they did was they basically hid in the trees. They were smaller then, a lot smaller. And they waited till the police went. They had no idea while the police had any interest in their vehicle. As soon as the police carried on up there, they got into their vehicle and disappeared that way. I was told the youngest one wasn't licensed to have a gun, and that's why they didn't want a confrontation with the police. We're at the top of the lane now, this track, coming up from Llanriclo. This is where the police came up in the commandeered Land Rover. From this point on, Hugh Lloyd took the steering wheel, although he was only 14, because he knew all this land, the farm tracks. He came through this gate and he went off in that direction. When these were doing this circular route, it's slightly higher ground there, so they could see over this rise here. The UFO was sat on the side of Cader Berwyn, about 4 miles. The B4391, which actually runs through that valley over there in front of the snow, that's 5 miles. That's where Pat Evans was, if looking this way sort of. It was pitch black that night. They didn't see anything. They thought they were looking for a possible plane crash because of the poachers' lights down there. However, on their return journey, the only thing of note was that for a few seconds, probably no more than 10 seconds, in the direction of where the UFO was, there was a bright light lit up, if you like, a big luminescence, which came up and then receded to nothing. The guy who was in charge of the police, Hugh Lloyd, just said he was in charge, and he had pips, which on his epaulets, which presumably gave him some sort of rank. He exclaimed, "That's it," but then the light subsided, and then he convinced himself it was nothing other than just a glitch, if you like. And in fact, in documents, Pat Evans claims she saw headlamps, and the timing is such that it's almost definitely the headlamps of the Land Rover returning to this point to leave the mountain, which she saw at 10 o'clock when she arrived 5 miles away. The line of sight always takes you across the top of the crests. If there was something large behind that hill now, Even though we're here, we wouldn't be able to see it, simply because our line of sight takes us over the ridge. And that's exactly what happened with the police. So they came away, they went back down the track. They had nothing to report other than that light. On the return trip from having searched up on the tops and found nothing, that commandeered Land Rover came back down here. They met another carload of police going up. They told them there was nothing happening, and they all came down for the night of the 23rd. That search was concluded.
Hugh Lloyd, who still lives in the area, spoke to us on our way up the mountain.
Well, the reason they came, they said there was a plane crash on the mountain. So.
Oh, that's what they said, yeah? Okay. And then you drove them up there, I believe?
I drove them up there with the next door neighbour.
Right, right. And what did they do when they got up there?
They just had a look round.
Uh-huh.
Oh, we did see a very bright light up there, a very bright light.
Right. And
this is about 40 minutes after the tremor.
Right.
Where we were showing this light, it was coming from the ground and
from behind the
like
hills that you were
in the valley, like he was falling in the valley, whatever it was coming from the like
valley. If there was an object there, it was out of your view. It was more of a light coming off it.
That's it, yeah.
And what colour would you describe the light as?
Very bright white.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And am I right in saying, as you said before, correct me if I'm wrong, it came up and then receded?
Yeah, that's it. Because when the police saw this light, they thought that must be the plane, and but it didn't last much. It was all.
And when it disappeared, they changed their mind.
Yeah. Did you see it disappear at all or not?
It just died out.
Right. It died out as you saw it. Right.
Even take off or anything, just died out.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Hugh. Thank you. Very grateful for that. Thanks very much indeed.
A 3-man search and rescue team, which had been requested by the police from RAF Valley in Anglesey, about 70 miles away, they arrived. They bedded down for the night, and first thing the following morning, police and these 3 military men were up on the slopes again, conducting another search. Right. And they only searched this part of the range on Bronwyn Mountain. They searched till just after 2 and called off the search. What's suspicious about that is a good 12 hours have passed, and we have a case whereby the Civil Aviation Authority and the military would well know where they lost the plane.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, why have they bothered to conduct a search for something that they know isn't lost?
Yeah.
The most important witness to the alleged UFO is Pat Evans. Pat was a district nurse, and she too felt the earth tremor. Thinking something had crashed in the mountains, she telephoned the police, then decided to set out in her car with her 2 daughters to see if she could find the crash site and offer medical assistance. Pat Evans, however, drove to a different location that the police had searched. She drove towards Berwyn along the B4391. Because when she spoke to the police, they failed to inform her of the search being carried out by the police on Bronwyn. In a letter she sent in 1991 to a local newspaper, she states, "I remember vividly the tremor in January 74. A telephone call to police headquarters at Colwyn Bay informed me of the possibility of an aeroplane crash on the Berwyn Mountains. Along with my 2 daughters, aged 15 and 14, we drove to the scene. I am a trained nurse and was willing to help. On arriving at the top of the Berwyns, what we saw was a huge orange, circular, brightly glowing, pulsating object, seemingly sitting on the mountainside. We observed it for 10 minutes approximately. Search parties with torches could be seen approaching it. There being no disaster as such, and my daughter's nervousness, we left. The whole incident was played down by the press and TV, and to my mind there was a cover-up. The whole area was sealed off to the public, even local shepherds, for days, maybe longer. We don't know to this day what we saw. I feel it will be 30 years before information is released. On the night in question, I was the only vehicle on the Bala to Llandithnog Mountain Road. My only regret was leaving the area too soon. Llandithnog villagers witnessed sightings of lights coming off the mountain later. In her police witness statement, she provides a rough sketch of what she saw. The Evans testimony is very important to this case. What follows is a brief clip from a previous documentary in which she gives an account of what she saw.
I thought there might be an air crash. Maybe as a nurse we could help giving first aid. So I called to my daughters and we got into the car and we made our way up to the mountain. We drove a fair way along the mountain road and to our left we could see a huge orange ball sitting on the mountain, glowing.
Yeah, we stopped and we started looking what we thought was going to be an aircraft on fire. Because we'd envisaged sort of, oh God, there might be bodies if it was an aeroplane crash, and we weren't too happy at that prospect, but we were quite surprised to see this big reddish orange ball just sitting there. There were no flames and it was so uniform. The shape, the round spherical shape of it made us realise we weren't looking at an aircraft. There were no flames jumping. But it was pulsating, this red-orange object that we saw.
And we could see little lights, like fairy lights, coming towards the object in a zigzag pattern, and we assumed at that time possibly there was someone going to see what was what.
With hindsight, we realised the search party couldn't have got there, located it and got there in the time it had taken us to go from the village up to the mountain.
Yeah.
No one could have organised themselves to get to the object that we saw.
Bear in mind it was drizzling with rain, and the Berwyn Mountains on a dark January night are an inhospitable place, to put it mildly, so mountain searches would have been extremely difficult. We know the police went up Bronwyn Mountain in a Land Rover. There was no record of the police searching the Berwyn Mountain, where Pat Evans witnessed the object. A search team of 3 people was dispatched from RAF Valley, but official reports show they did not arrive in Llandrillo until after midnight, and according to the report, found nothing. So who did the torchlights belong to, which were approaching the object at 9:50 p.m? We will come back to this point later in the film. It's fairly well known that Pat Evans will no longer speak about what she saw that night. Rumours abound that she has been bought off to stop her talking more about the incident. Her testimony is not the only reliable description of this strange object. Although the people of Llandrillo could not see the object Pat Evans saw due to the steep mountains, there was another group of witnesses who did have visibility of the Berwyn Mountain on that evening. At a place called Garth Goch, about 3 miles from where Pat Evans witnessed the object, lived witness Mike Saville with his wife and young child. No previous documentary has featured the testimony from witnesses at this location. The small holding is situated at a higher vantage point than Llandrillo, with a clear view of the tops of the Berwyn mountain range. Although Mike Saville no longer lives at Garth Goch, he travelled up to Wales to be interviewed on location outside his old house, joined by researchers Scott Felton and Margaret Fry.